Training prioritization is really important, especially for those of you who feel like you are doing a lot of things and ending up not achieving any of them. What's up fam? Welcome back to another Hotbot session. This video I want to stress the importance of training prioritization. Okay, so this is really important, and there are a couple of things that I want you to take note of as you are either planning your trainings. If not, just if you are just kind of going with the flow, it's also pretty important. Okay, so training prioritization is very important, and there are a couple of things that situation you could be in that will determine your priorities in terms of training. Okay, and this is really important because even for those of you who kind of reach out and let me know, and ask about my program, whether it's a good fit for you. Typically, okay, there are people who come on, and I do realize that your priority right now may not be on fat loss, alright, the things that we help with. Okay, your priorities might be elsewhere. And for those people, what I actually do, and this is why this is important, is I actually advise you to prioritize and focus on those other things first, before you come on or even consider joining us in this fat loss phase. Okay, so I'm going to share with you what are some of these factors and why I kind of tell other people to prioritize other things first. Firstly, in terms of training prioritization, right, in terms of your training, you've got to realize that if you are injured, right? Okay, it's not just like big injuries. I don't want you to think of it as like you got into a car accident and you're recuperating, that kind of injuries. Obviously, that's the case also, but even if you're injured in a very minor way, it could be that, for example, your wrist broke, for some reason or not, you fell, whatever. Okay, if you actually got certain injuries that actually inhibit big movements, and not like maybe fingers could be something you can work around and stuff like that, but like usually big movements like your wrist, your elbows, your shoulders, even your hips, your spine especially, that's a very important one as well, your knees as well as your ankles. Okay, typically when you have injuries, probably the better thing for you to do is, of course, allow some time for you to recover, but also what's more important is you need to prioritize your training in a way that helps you to work around the injury. Okay, and typically when you're injured, it really depends on you, but maybe you want to manage your goals, okay, in the sense that you may not want to have a stretch goal in the sense of like fat loss or weight loss or stuff like that, or even strength gain goals, right? Typically, if you're injured, you might want to spend some time on, yes, improving your strength, but not think of it as a huge amount of increase, right? The strength increase that you probably want to aim for is probably gaining the confidence back in the specific joints you're injured, and of course, not just strength in those joints, but really just movement in general. Okay, so if you are injured, I would definitely advise you, and I would definitely want you to consider not prioritizing things like fat loss or just stretching yourself out too far. Okay, you really just want to focus on recovery, getting better, getting your movements better, focusing on mobility stuff. Okay, and once you get those down, once your injury is pretty much, if you're at about 80-90%, that's when you probably want to, or you should be able to start going for more of a stretch goal. Okay, typically you don't wait until 100% because that will never, that'll be a bit too far out sometimes, and of course sometimes in the process of that 80 to 90 to 100%, you could already be doing things that are more aligned with the original goal that you might have. Okay, does that make sense? Is it still live? Okay, great. So the next thing I want to talk about is, okay, apart from injuries, so typically people with more severe injuries, I kind of tell them to focus elsewhere. But of course, it's minor injuries, we can still design a program for you. We can still help you, to achieve your goals. Okay, but I want you to take note of this for yourself. Okay, let me know if this is going okay, because on my phone it seems like it's not loading well. I'm not too sure if it's just me. Okay, anyway, that's the first thing. Okay, if you're injured, you do want to prioritize your training for mobility, gaining the confidence back in yourself, okay, rather than just fat loss and stuff like that. Yeah, let me know if y'all cannot hear me, alright, because like it's hanging on my phone. I'm not sure if it's transmitting. Okay, so the second thing is if there are a lot of stresses going on in your life. Okay, I talked about this before, well, a lot of times, but you've got to realize that stresses really contribute a huge part into recovery, as well as, you know, whatever goals you have, fat loss, strength gains, performance-based goals. Typically, these are all things that, you know, is going to cause you to want to stretch yourself, which means the stress you're putting on yourself is probably already significant. Okay, if you have a lot of other stresses going on in your life, then you definitely want to consider what are your priorities right now. Okay, this is something that I tell our members as well. And sometimes I get them to be like, you know what, if you're really stressed now, you could even postpone the coaching till later. Okay, we can just pause now and coach you later on. But typically, I would say that if you can still manage some sort of stress, I would still want to coach our members through it, because our coaching program is that way, right? We want to coach you through, we want to coach you in a way that is helping you to learn how to navigate your fitness around your lifestyle. So we don't want to force it against your lifestyle. So even if you get busier, sometimes your project gets in the way, we can still navigate around it in certain ways. But the more important thing here is to note that if you have a lot of stresses going on, you do want to prioritize your training in a way that it doesn't obstruct or intervene with the other stresses. Okay, what that means is, if you are facing a lot of stress, let's say from work, okay, for example, for those of you who are still working, a lot of stresses from work, or maybe a lot of stresses from family, typically this stress will still contribute to the stress you're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally. Okay, and what this means is you may then want to kind of deprioritize the intensity of your training, right? You don't want to push yourself too far, too hard for your training. You might not even want to work out that often, okay, because all of this comes back down to stress management. Okay, so your training priorities might have to shift when you face a lot of external other stresses. Okay, so you do want to take note of that, and just make it a point to note that whenever you get more and more stressed, don't feel more and more stressed to try to reach out and just go all out for training as well. Okay, this is what I mentioned. If you're trying to achieve everything, sometimes you end up achieving nothing. So this is something to consider. The other thing is, so injury is one. Okay, the other thing is stress, you know, physical, emotional stress and all that. Now the third thing that is also important for you in terms of training priority is really asking yourself, what is your long-term goal, right? I'm going to put this right here. It's all over the board, sorry about that. But long-term goal. Okay, this is important because I want you to realize that your fitness journey, your goals, and of course just life in general, nothing is ever a real straight path. Even if you want to go in the fastest path, it's never going to be the one straight path, okay? And why am I talking about long-term goal and not just short-term goals, right? I'm talking about long-term goals. A lot of you want to learn how to lose fat sustainably. You want to be able to get certain results and achieve it sustainably. Okay, if that's the case, you got to realize that just focusing on fat loss may not be the way that you should go about it for a majority of you. Okay, if you do want to learn how to sustainably keep the fat off, at some point a good percentage of you may want to consider building a bit more muscles and then losing the fat again. Okay, so it's not like a straight path. You just focus on losing fat, bam, you're done. Okay, typically we are helping our members to also be able to eat more and sustain the results, right? And for those of you who are also wanting to achieve this, you've got to realize that that means that you may want to focus on fat loss maybe now. Okay, of course some percentage of you may not want to focus on fat loss now, which we will get to in the second part, right? So you may want to go through the fat loss phase now. At some point, if you realize that you're getting too hungry, you're not feeling the joy anymore, you just don't feel as motivated. This period of time, mentally, emotionally, you might be really drained as well. At this point, thinking of the long-term goal, it would be better for you to get out of the fat loss phase. Okay, just enjoy yourself a bit more. Maybe go through you can don't have a goal at this point, or you can set a goal as a performance goal like strength gain goals or muscle gain goals. Okay, that being said, even though we are going through fat loss, you still want to try to achieve muscle gain. Okay, but I'm saying that in this other phase, after this fat loss phase, you might want to dedicate a bit more focus on growing a bit more muscles. Okay, and then once you go through this, once you're pretty much happy, at this point you're probably going to be eating way more than what you were used to in the past, and you were probably much leaner or toned in the past compared to the past as well. Okay, and at this point, if you think that, you know what, you still want to challenge yourself, you still want to lose the fat, get leaner or toned, then you can go through another fat loss phase. Okay, but realize that this is your decision to make. At the end of the day, if you feel like you're just happy where you are, you don't actually think that losing more fat is going to help you be happier, then that's great. Just stay there. Okay, don't feel compelled or like influenced by other people who tell you that, or who make you feel that you need to lose more fat. Okay, you got to decide on that for yourself. Okay, you got to weigh what's going on here. You want to lose more fat, or you want to be able to enjoy more of what you're having now. Okay, great. So it's all over the board. Okay, but training prioritization is really important, especially for these three scenarios. Okay, you've got to learn how to change up your training. All right, you got to learn how to prioritize your training, the different types of training in accordance to the situation you're facing. Firstly, if you're injured, you definitely want to focus a bit more on mobility stuff, recovery, not so much of a stretch goal, okay, before proceeding on to the stretch goals like fat loss, strength gains, and stuff like that. Then, of course, the second scenario is where you have a lot of external stresses. You got to realize that you have to balance those external stresses with your other like training stresses. Okay, of course, nutrition side also, there will be stresses in your body, so you got to realize that you need to maybe want to consider changing up your training, not be pushing as hard, or even just reducing the workouts. Okay, so that's the second scenario. And there's the third scenario. Okay, you want to learn how to prioritize different goals at different points of your fitness journey. Okay, especially because you have a long-term goal. Okay, short-term goal, obviously really depends on probably these two factors a bit more, but in the long term, if you want to be able to achieve a more toned physique, a more lean physique, and be able to eat more and be able to sustain it better, then that's a long-term goal, right? You also want to think about not just focusing on fat loss for the duration of time you're still working on this. Okay, fat loss could be one phase, and then you could come back to it later on. But in the long term, you got to realize that it's not just one straight path for you or people around you. Okay, good. So hopefully this helps, and this helps you to kind of think about how you might want to start prioritizing the way you train, how you might want to even deprioritize the way you're training. Okay. Yep. Hope that is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. If not, I am gone. Alright, for those of you who are still kind of struggling, and okay, like I said, right, sometimes if there are people who come to us and then realize that I help them realize that maybe the priority right now is not this, for those of you who still unsure, okay, just feel free to reach out, let me know what you're kind of struggling with, and we'll see if you are in a position for us to really help you. Like I said, you want to learn how to reach your goal with and along your lifestyle. Okay, you don't want to go against it. So it really depends. Okay, there are a lot of factors. Reach out and let us know. Okay, but if you're still really struggling and you realize that yes, the priority is for you right now, and you realize that you're just kind of done with trying out on your own. By the way, I encourage that. Okay, try out on your own, but sometimes if you're just always frustrated, you just can't reach the point you want to be reaching. There are really a lot of benefits from asking for help. okay? And of course, it doesn't have to be me, but if you feel comfortable with me, reach out, okay? So anyway, this is training prioritization. Hopefully this helps. Keep pushing on, stay safe, and as always, appreciate the people around you, appreciate your efforts, appreciate yourself, and keep pushing on. Hawk here, till the next session. See ya.